Marais Planning Commission to order, and seeing that we have 3 commissioners here today. Ben Peters, myself, and would you like to introduce yourself here to the audience, the people at home?
Brandon Batchelor.
Brandon, you could move your mic towards us.
Brandon Batchelor.
Thank you. And we'll get right to it. We have a consent agenda now, and I would entertain a motion to proceed with the consent agenda.
Seconded.
All right?
Yes, I would adopt the agenda.
Thanks, Ben. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes, and on we go. We have 3 public hearings today, and we'll get right to them. The conditional use request that we have here going forward from David Walter. Is David here? No? All right.
Any letters or anything, Patrick,
Yeah.
on any of these?
Any letters on any?
Okay.
On any of these? Okay, very good. Going over from what we got, it's not too crazy to think he wouldn't be here, because these are, it seems like, all right, he's not really gonna have people traipsing in and out. Considering how much FedEx is being used in our community, that doesn't seem, the increase that he was talking about did not seem to be so great at all, in fact. So I am actually just going to go right ahead and say I think we should grant this conditional use.
The only comment that I have is, when we've granted conditional use businesses in residential zoning,
Yeah.
we've always looked at noise and understanding that residential use is reserved for some quiet hours, presumably, right? They're not going to be competing with business. And so if his neighbors hear bandsaws at all hours, that
Yeah.
could pose an issue.
Yeah, no, for sure. And are either of you David Walter? No David Walter. Okay. Yeah. Again, that's not addressed. We do, I guess we have ways of following that up. Just in reading what he's doing, it doesn't sound like that, but I don't know that world at all. So to me, it's like, you're right, he could be using some heavy machinery that,
Yeah, that's,
you
would have been nice. Those are just some questions. I don't understand the process of making footwear, right? But,
yeah,
so that was a question,
yep.
and then, any cost, he just mentioned a benchtop bandsaw in his basement and whatever. And then the other question was, are there any caustic materials or odors or something that could pose a risk to not only his property, but neighboring properties?
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess I hear you. But I'm feeling like, hopefully this will fall into the category of neighbor with neighbor talking about it and going forward and saying like, okay, we're gonna address it this way or that way. They can do that in-house rather than having it come back to us in any way. Yeah, because just reading it over, I hear what you're saying. A lot of what we looked at too, though, has been like, are people going in and out? Is there parking issues?
Right.
Obviously, he's addressed both of those. That's not going to be the issue or the problem. But yeah, I remember now, yeah, we have had a couple where noise was definitely an issue, but it's internal to the house, which I guess the other one that I'm thinking of at least, that was not. It was definitely in a building, a garage that was
That's right.
outside of
Yeah.
the
It
home.
was certainly unique, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Do you have any comments or any thoughts?
No, not really. You said the bandsaw was in the basement, or was the location not?
I think he does say that.
So it was confined
Yeah.
to,
Let's see, where does
I
he
read
say
it a
that?
couple different ways, but
Here it is. Let's see. Go press.
the materials are listed under section 3.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the business,
Section
so-
3. Ah, here we go.
Should contain within the basement of the house. Okay, yeah, there it is.
yeah, of course.
So, yeah, I mean, if it's
Drill
in the
press,
basement of the
sewing
house, it's
machines.
a bandsaw. I mean, even if, you know, especially without any neighbors saying anything, I kind of feel like this seems like something that should go forward. You know, we can send it up to the council. Obviously, people, if they, you know, hear about it again, they have an opportunity to address it at that point as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't see a reason to deny it so long as business hours were, didn't go too late.
Yeah, and I think what he's saying is he's gonna be using FedEx down at Bucks, so.
So I think if you're gonna say that, you have to, we have to be a little careful because, if we're gonna say that, you have to define what that means as far as what the time is, and, if you're not, then that's okay too.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I guess I would rather not put any of that kind of language in there because,
No.
you know, if he's going forward with this business as he's spelled it out here, it seems like, okay, what does he say? He's gonna be UPS and Speedy through Bucks. And I just feel like, okay, well, he's making stuff there and then he's going down and getting rid of it pretty quick there. And he's doing it himself, he's not having somebody else do it, so.
Right.
I mean, and
Okay.
it's a one-man shop, so who knows how busy it'll be and that kind of thing.
Right. No, it sounds like a good idea to me.
Okay. All right, well then I would propose that we say yes to this conditional use request by David Walter to have a in-house business in the R1.
Seconded.
Yeah. Do
Well, I
have a
would put a
second?
motion that we, approve the conditional use permit request for David Walter.
All right, and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. This will go to the city council. And when does the city council meet, Patrick? I've forgotten.
Wednesday, next one.
Just next Wednesday. Great. I'll be ready. All right. And the next was for a variance request for a fence, and you guys are probably aware of where we're talking about. Up there, I don't know if either of you, after seeing this, were able to drive up there, but it seemed like, and, you know, and looking at the photograph again, it seemed like a pretty, I mean, it doesn't seem like an unreasonable request or use of his property. And I personally don't see any reason not to go for that one as well. Seemed like, okay, yeah, having some sort of border right there in 61, because even, you know, the entity that it was before, that was always kind of a concern too at that time. So, you know, the fact that he's doing it and, you know, yes, he's gonna be doing it within the setback. You know, that seems, you know, because it's following the tree line, to me, it seems like, okay, that's kind of an, you know, an accepted line out there that some peoples in the community have agreed to in the past, so it seems no reason not to go forward. And again, without any comments from any of the neighbors, it seems like, yeah. But did you have anything, Ben, on that one?
This, I don't have an issue with that, and I certainly understand from a safety standpoint of
Yeah.
if you're having larger gatherings and using
Yep.
that space.
Yep.
That seems to be
Yeah, it seems,
appropriate.
yeah, it seems wise to do that. So I would propose to approve the Geekus variance request, or Getchus. I always get this screwed up. What is it, Ben, do you know?
I think it's Getchus.
The Getchus request.
I would put a motion that we approve the variance request as proposed.
Great, I would second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on to the big one. So, there's a lot here. For
Before we
sure.
get going.
Yeah.
Cooper, I noticed you came in, you have a property adjoining this?
Yes.
Did you come for the public comment? Did you want to say anything before we?
I don't have any comments in support or opposition, I'm just
Okay,
observing how the sausage is made. and-
just wanted to give,
Yeah.
Very good. And do you, Ben?
oh, I got a lot, yeah, well, a lot of questions on it, and it's obviously a really major undertaking,
Yeah.
and it looks like all of the homework has been done. I think that's gonna provide a lot of data for the city, if the city ever wants to get involved in doing something down the road, as far as costs and some of those things. I think that would be really helpful
Yep.
for us. Having just not gone through a plat approval before, or what the process is, I think I need more guidance than,
Yeah.
then I'm prepared to just say yay or nay or what. I don't know what's being asked of us other than just to talk about it, but
Yeah, well, I think the primary thing, or the salient thing that we need to, that we're being asked to comment on is really the dead end piece of it all. Like, that is the one thing where there's a hitch in the giddy up, because everything else kind of scans. Everything else is kind of like, okay, hit that button, hit that button, hit that button. But the dead end piece of it is the piece where it's like, okay, but that's definitely not in our, that's not something that we would immediately approve, and that's why it actually came to us.
I understand.
Because
okay.
everything else they did, I mean, you saw Mike's comments, everything else within there is like, they did it, they've done it, it's within range.
I'm not sure
it's-
that I saw Mike's comments.
Well, he wrote them in bold after,
Oh, that's,
yeah. And so, they've basically hit all of them except for the one. Now, the thing I thought I read, and maybe, Chris, you could speak to this.
May I?
Yeah, come forward, please. Oh, and would you state your name and all that jazz?
I'm Chris Skildum, the applicant in this matter, I guess
Yeah.
you'd say.
Great. Yeah, the one thing I thought I saw, but maybe you can just point right to it, is if you had talked to the fire chief, if you had, and he was,
He said
felt
looks
like
good.
it was gonna
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, and is that in here somewhere? Because I was trying to find it
So-
again.
The fire chief is very concise, so I have an email that says, looks good.
Okay.
I could have printed it and submitted it with it, but instead of doing that, I just, said that.
Said that he was,
Yeah.
that he was good with it.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, because that is the biggest thing, but this is obviously a big deal, a big undertaking for you. And of course, as the city, we're pretty excited about it as well. This is the kind of thing that we've been hoping for and been looking to see happen in our community. So that's, there are lots of reasons that we would love to see this thing go forward. But I do see that we have plenty of people here. I think I know where you're coming from, and I'm sure that the commissioners here are all pretty clear on that. But did you want to say more? Do you want to make a statement?
I could just speak to the dead end that.
Yeah, please.
We did try a lot of drafts of how we could make something of this property, and everything led to a dead end. So one of the earlier drafts had a cul-de-sac as a circle, and we played around with cul-de-sac hammerheads and working with MSA, which is our engineering firm. Charlie was very helpful with all this too. We did explore a lot of options on how to mitigate the dead end, and we landed on having a hammerhead that had adequate turnaround at the end of it, so.
Okay. Great. And, is there expectation of the city doing anything in this project other than approving it?
There's no expectation, but Any help would be welcome.
Oh, yeah, you bet. But, okay, just making sure, because that's always something that'll come up.
Right.
People will want to know. Okay, great. And I am seeing a number of people here. We're not normally set up for public comments, but we do accommodate public comments when they come up. Is there anybody here, besides Chris, that would like to say something before we move forward today? Anybody in the audience? No?
I spoke with Mike today. and
Okay.
There was a couple of things he wanted me to bring up for clarification.
Yeah, please.
One is the road itself. Is that intended to be a private road or assumed by the city after the construction?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay.
So we've drafted association declarations that would keep it a private road. Again, I wouldn't be opposed to any help in ownership or maintenance of the road.
Okay.
But going into it, we plan to, take ownership of that road and responsibility for it, so.
So then the second, and he just said clarification on that, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second being, the utilities, would you intend for those to be owned by the city or owned by the association?
Another good question, and this is where correspondence from the city and the city's people, you could say, whether it's LHB or the city attorney or whoever has to look closely at that to determine what the best route for doing that is. I've got this far to get further, right?
Yeah.
So some of those questions, I would welcome a conversation to get clarification.
Right on.
And so to follow up on that, if you want to own the utilities, as I understood it, then he was saying it looks good. If you'd like the city to own the utilities, he said there might need to be more conversation about access and access to get vehicles in there for maintenance and things like that.
Sure.
Based on how things are laid out.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. No,
I'm not
these
prepared to have
are,
that
no, these are
conversation.
questions and conversations I fully anticipated that we need to have to go any
Yeah.
further than this, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. So that's great. Thank you. Anything more from the mouth of Mike?
Just looking at my notes here. Oh,
One more thing.
one more, last thing, just, he mentioned that, it might be, or that we should probably have a little more detailed stormwater plan.
Sure, so, we do have, the first draft of, engineered stormwater map that, it wasn't necessarily appropriate at this time to overlay it onto the preliminary plat map. But it does exist, and the plat is actually drawn to accommodate the stormwater plan. So if you look at some of the shapes of the outlots where somebody might look at it and be like, hey, you could put another lot or 3 there, that's been left just
Because it was
for
mitigated.
stormwater.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Yep. Okay, and that's really it? Okay, great. Well, I think, for the purposes of planning and zoning, we've gotten a lot of information. We have plenty to work with right here. I do feel like this is something to pass on to the city council for final approval, but obviously, there's some more conversation that will need to happen before then with the city, with Mike. So definitely pursue that. But as far as the dead end goes, I guess for me, that was my big thing, because that is the one thing that pops up for us that says like, hey, this one thing hasn't been checked. And we have to decide, is that in the interest of the city or not? And I think, the preponderance of this project just shows that this is what we want to see happen in our city. We do want to see more housing, this kind of housing. And I feel very strongly that we should go ahead and pass this. Oh, we do have a public comment. I knew it would come up.
I spoke to you, Chris. I'm Scott Hawkins.
Hi, Scott, nice to see you.
Just got a quick question while you're here.
Yeah.
So the question is, we all know the situation with the housing.
Yes.
But what kind of controls are there gonna be in this? Because most likely, some of these lots will be purchased by somebody in the city to come up here, maybe a
Sure.
second home.
Yep,
You know, VRBO, that's been mishandled, we have that issue.
yep,
So this isn't gonna do any good for seasonal people that make $15, $25 an hour. You know, so it seems to me that if the intentions are to help out with our housing situation here, then there has to be some control who he sells to. It needs to be somebody
Yeah.
that provides the service, somebody at the hospital that's looking for a house. I know it's a couple of years away from that actually happening,
Right.
but what good does it do if there isn't some kind of control or limitations to who these lots are sold?
right.
People that live and work here, that provide
Yep.
services, I'm all for subdevelopment.
Yep.
But just to be turned loose and let anybody, what percentage of those 24 homes are really gonna be
Well-
doing us any good?
Yeah, so I can speak to that.
Okay.
So the intention of this is for entry-level housing, call it market rate housing. There's an accompanying thick stack of a draft of association documents that, for the purpose of other people purchasing lots or even me building on lots in there, would dictate, you know, what can be built. Just to the point that we can mitigate, I don't know if we can prohibit vacation rentals. And then beyond that, if somebody wants to buy a lot and build on it, they're gonna be at the mercy of the existing ordinance. So
Yeah,
there's already things in place that prohibit. I think you're
Well,
getting
yeah.
the gist of what I'm saying.
yeah, so I think just, well, can I just comment real quickly? So, you know, the thing to, we don't do that. Like, we're not gonna tell private people or private businesses what they can do and can't do. And we're not gonna be able to control who buys it. You're absolutely right on that.
And I
And,
understand that
but-
would be detrimental for Chris to how do you sell land with controls like that?
yeah, and it's,
But
yeah.
it's a real issue if you're trying to address the housing.
Yes, no, it is, but the two things I would like to say is the VRBO piece, we do have ordinances about that, and in the R1, they are not allowed. And this would be additional R1, or actually, it's already in R1.
That's what I was trying to say. You said it so.
So it's in R1, and that's really important. So there isn't gonna be a VRBO, or if there is, they will be shut down because it's not allowed. The other thing is that, you know, we have so much pressure in the system that you're right, like maybe it's somebody from the cities or whatever, maybe it's somebody you just don't like, that's gonna move in there, but, you know, that's gonna take pressure off of the whole system, so maybe this other house is gonna become more affordable, because that person's gonna say, well, I can get this, so I'm gonna leave that open. You know, so it's kinda like that, it's not a, you know, like, it's built for this person here in town, but it will open up, or ideally, it will open up some pressure, or relieve some pressure on the system. But anyway, and there was somebody there.
Yeah, just two quick things. One, Chris has to be, any developer has to be really careful with restrictions, because there's a Fair Housing Act, so you can't tell someone they can't buy it unless they work at blank place. Like,
Right.
it's illegal. So not only would it be inconvenient for selling purposes, but it would be illegal. The other thing is that I just wanted to second your comments. By the way, I'm Jason Helm, the executive director. of
I was gonna
HRA.
ask you, yes.
And I'm here mostly in support of Chris's project, because as you kind of limited earlier, we need it.
Yeah,
And the only way to get out of the housing problem is to build more housing. And so this will alleviate pressure on this section of the market. And it's just one part of the, you know, solution, but I just want to say that I think it is part of the solution, is to do projects like this.
yep, yep, and happily, it's a local person who's doing it as well.
Right.
So one last question.
Yes, certainly.
I understand that point, and that would be suicide to put that in any contract. But I think a very small percentage is really gonna help out our situation for people living and work here. But it's, you know, whatever,
Yeah.
we'll find out. But so the other
Yeah.
thing is, how many
Yeah.
feet does the city have to run water and sewer for this development at the cost of the taxpayers in the city? How many feet from the existing water and
right.
sewer line to the property?
Yeah, and that's
Heard
not,
estimate of $1,000 a foot.
well,
I don't know.
I think Chris can actually talk to this.
I,
I mean, we're,
Yeah, so we don't have comprehensive cost estimates of the whole project, but My engineering firm, MSA, which is pretty much in agreement with LHB about most things so far, is that for water and sewer, $200 a lineal foot is a reasonable budget. So that being said, the distance from the existing water and sewer mains to the edge of the property is about 300 feet.
Yeah. And then who pays for that?
It's a good question,
Yeah,
but we have to get this far to get further, so.
exactly. So that's part of the negotiation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Are there more statements or comments?
A couple questions.
Sure.
Could-
Got in here,
sorry,
right?
And actually, if you could come a little closer and state your name,
If everyone can
we'll
come
do
up
this
to the
properly.
Becky Kaiser and Patrick, you covered some of
Can you
my
come up to the
questions.
mic, please?
Maybe this one here, if that might be easier, so
You're
Chris
right.
can maintain.
Yeah, just a couple questions about the sewer and water.
Yep.
Patrick covered my questions. I was in earlier to talk to him about
Oh,
some of
okay.
the stuff that we had asked about. But the sewer and water now, if that goes into these properties, are adjacent owners that are near this property, are they, if they were planning to build, gonna have to hook up to sewer and water also?
I mean, we, I'd actually, I have to think about that. So you're talking about like if somebody builds next to where they are?
Well, I'm actually south of the power line, but,
Okay.
I mean, I don't know where, I didn't get a map, I just saw it when I came
Oh,
into
okay.
one day, so I was wondering if there's an extra copy available.
If you were able to build without sewer.
Yeah, you're still,
You still be able to do it?
oh, here we go. He's got a map for you.
Okay. Yeah, see, I'm right there, so I was wondering. So this is the lot, you own this too, but there's no lots planned for that, that's what you were talking about, right? Okay,
And there wouldn't be a requirement.
okay,
You wouldn't be required to do that. If you're already able to, as Patrick was saying, if that's already something that's permitted.
Right.
It wouldn't be taken up.
That's just
Okay.
based on the size of your property.
yeah, okay. Is there a smaller version of this, or do you know where?
Patrick, is there a smaller version?
That's on our website.
Oh,
So
okay.
I could go to the website?
Yeah,
Yeah.
in today's meeting packet, that's included in the
Okay, okay.
Do you have a small map?
Do you want to come forward to the mic? Yeah, no, please.
You want me to say my name again? Or-
Yeah, that'd be good, just to have it on the record. I mean, we probably
Jason
got it.
Hale. Just a question about that, just to be clear. So if it was private utilities, I suspect that they wouldn't have to connect because they need permission from Chris to connect if you were gonna build.
Yeah.
If
But
it is
I thi-
legally accessible though, and it's in city limits, and there are public utilities available, I'd have to double check the ordinance to make sure that you're not required to connect to city utilities where it is available.
If it's a new build, is that what you're talking about?
Right, yeah, now,
Yeah.
if it's existing, that's fine.
Yeah,
You
and
don't
I
have
thought
to,
he was
like-
talking about
No, yeah,
existing.
it's a property I developed myself, and someday I was planning to buy and build this future home, but, if and when I do it, I don't know, but I want,
Just to make sure, right?
right?
Okay,
It's
yeah.
probably much cheaper for you to connect to city utilities if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Possibly, yes.
But I just want to make sure that would be
Yeah.
something you probably want to check the ordinance for, because it would
Yeah.
probably require you to connect to public utilities if they're accessible at the street.
Yeah.
And that's, I was
And
just
that-
saying that this won't have any effect on that.
Because of his location of his property?
Well, no, because if that requirement would be there whether or not Chris is doing this.
Right, yeah,
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 sure.
yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
that's what I was sure.
The u-
Okay.
Charlie Trovall, North Shore Land Survey, the utilities for this project are all well confined within the boundaries of the property and quite a ways away from any of the adjoining property owners.
Okay,
So really doesn't, like Patrick said, doesn't really have a whole lot of effect on them.
Okay,
great.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Anybody else? Okay. I would then move on to a motion. I would make the motion to move the Vesta preliminary plat on to the city council for next week, I guess.
Seconded.
Any more discussion, Ben?
Yeah, I'm not gonna, I like what's been done. I wouldn't hold up a development because of a dead-end road.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Yeah, all right. Well, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
So it goes.
Cool. Can I make a request while I'm here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mostly speaking to Patrick, but
Okay.
to everybody, that these were really good questions. They were really good questions from Mike. And I would ask that between now and the city council meeting, that any more questions from Mike can be more of a collaborative conversation. Up to this point, I've kind of been on my own out in the ether with leaning on, some hired professionals. But I think it could go really well if we kind of were a team,
For sure.
between the city and I, we could get a lot done. So
Yeah.
if we can just maintain communication and these types of questions can be conversational, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not even just related to your project, but all future projects for Grand Marais and Cook County, right? Should be
Right.
streamlined.
Right, as a habit.
If it
yeah.
is in fact a priority, which I've heard endlessly that it is.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
I
No,
agree with you.
Cool. Great.
excellent.
Thanks
Great.
very much.
Thank you. We'll see you next week. And with that,
Thanks, Chris.
Well, yes, thanks. And with that, I will call the commissioners, or the planning commission to a close.
So we have,
Oh, that's right. We've got one more thing.
we have a
Woo!
CI district to.
Forgot about that. Yes. Our little baby.
Good job, Chris.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
You too.
See you. Yes, yes, yes. Hey there, Jeff.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
I heard you too. You almost cut me out.
I'm a little hungry, but I'm patient. All right,
Let's do it.
we're ready.
You ready? I'll share my screen then.
Excellent.
Let's see. Are you able to see that?
Yeah, we got that.
All right. All right, so you remember, back in April, we had the first discussion about the CI zoning district study, and the purpose is to determine how to potentially have housing development occur within the CI zoning district, which does not allow residential today. This is the work scope I'm showing here. So we're in number 3, we're evaluating alternatives. Just a reminder, the CI district exists on the edges of the Highway 61 corridor on the west side and the east side. And then as part of the study, we've developed this existing land use map, which was taking all of the tax classification data from the county and translating that into kind of traditional land uses that a city would have in their plans. So more general. And we've talked about this before, but there's quite a bit of residential, both on the east side and the west side, which is showing up as yellow and orange on the map. So that's what we're working with today, as far as what's out there. And then at the April meeting, the options, we discussed 4 options. So just to summarize that really quickly, we talked about amending the CI district to add residential uses, and then standards for that. No changes to the district boundaries. We also talked about keeping the district in place only where commercial industrial uses are present today or are anticipated to develop in the future. And then rezone existing and potential residential areas to one of the existing mixed use or residential districts. third one was to rezone the CI district properties to basically mixed use, so use one of the mixed use districts that you have today. Fourth one is to create a new district, mixed use district, which would essentially be something like H61, which does not allow first floor residential, so it would be, a version of that Highway 61 district, basically. So tonight, we want to talk about, what we agreed to in April is to talk about the first one, so see if this works and if you support it or not. But the first alternative is to amend the CI district, add residential, and then also the standards that are appropriate for residential uses. In the code, technically that involves the CI district section. And then at the end of the zoning code, there's this table
Yeah.
that has a really memorable name, non-residential district provisions and dimensional requirements. So those are the two things that would actually get changed in the code. Generally, what's allowed in the CI district today is commercial, including auto-oriented, industrial or manufacturing, and lodging. And, all this information should be in your packet as well. I'm just going over it
Yeah.
just to make sure everybody's on the same page. So what you probably, if you did have a chance to look through the packet, the related zoning districts are the other mixed-use districts that exist in Grand Marais today. So H61 is mixed use. The downtown waterfront district is mixed use. Obviously, the mixed use district is, and then the RCN district is as well. And they have a different mix of uses, but they're all mixed. And then the other non-residential business district closest to the CI district is the BDA district. So that's just a reference of what you have in place today.
Right.
So in your packet, there is this table that hopefully is helpful to think about how these districts are different. We've worked in other cities where the goal may be to create a new mixed-use district, and it becomes challenging because the city already has a bunch of them, and maybe you don't actually need a new one. And so we want to make sure that we're not, creating a new district for no reason.
Right.
Or changing the CI district for no reason. So this shows that, the districts are different in terms of industrial, commercial, auto-oriented, not auto-oriented, the scale of lodging, and then the types of residential. So they're all can be seen as being unique, I guess. The only one that in my mind, I guess, is outside the scope of this project, but the MU and the RCN actually seem pretty similar and probably could be one district, but we're not, this study's not charged with changing those two districts. We're trying to stay focused on the CI district. And so all this table is showing is, what we're talking about tonight is adding that red box is all residential is allowed in the CI district, which is different than some of the other districts near downtown and in downtown where you don't want first floor residential, or they don't allow first floor residential.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the bottom, just trying to show that basically all these districts, with the exception of the BDA, are kind of a different scales of mixed-use districts, starting with a highway mixed-use district, which would be the CI if it gets amended, all the way down to the RCN, which is more of a neighborhood mixed-use district, but they're kind of on a spectrum, basically.
Yeah.
So the changes that we're considering or talking about tonight for your consideration are, pretty straightforward. One is maybe change the name of the CI district to be mixed use. So highway mixed use, that's why we were looking at that spectrum concept. Revise the purpose statement, add 4 housing types to the CI district that are permitted uses. Change performance standards that are in there today to just apply to industrial uses. That's what they're really intended for, and they're in that that's why they're in that district, even though they're also referred to by other districts like the BDA district. Change screening standards to apply to non-residential uses only. Add standards for buffering between differing land uses within the district. And that could be, a specific quantity of trees and shrubs. It could be a wall, a fence, or a berm. And we'll talk about that a little bit more shortly. And then there's requirements in the district today, the CI district today, related to vehicle and pedestrian circulation. And we're recommending that just apply to commercial, industrial, warehouses uses that are allowed today in the CI, but not to residential. And then this table, it's so big that you can't read it, right? So it's in your packet, but this is that table at the end. And there's some suggestions to cleaning up the table that are, pretty much kind of technical updates to make everything consistent. So this is the small list for that, is basically changing the name possibly to the HMU district.
Mm-hmm.
And then this boundary line, whatever you want to call it, buffer.
Jeff,
think
we're
there's
not
3 ways.
we're not seeing what you're talking about. We're just seeing the first page. Just so you
What?
know.
Really?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Hang on. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can.
No worries. I was following along in the packet. I thought, oh, okay, here we go.
Well, let's see. Share. So are you seeing that?
Yep.
Now do you see the map?
Yep. I wonder if there's
Hmm.
maybe 2 instances before.
I wonder if it's because I went to, well, we don't need to
It's
figure it
working
out.
now.
Yeah, I think it might have to do with going to the slideshow. Okay. So, sorry about that. So, you know what the zoning map looks like? This map. Let me get to the slide we were on. That's the table I was talking about, which is in the packet. It changes this big table. So this is where we're at. So the potential changes to that large table at the end of the code are pretty straightforward. It's changing the name from CI to HMU possibly. And then the table, between the table and the district, there's, I think, basically 3 ways that there's either what you want to call a boundary line or a buffer, or anyway, it equates to having this 50-foot setback from any residential district adjacent to the CI district, which is pretty typical. Most of the CI district is adjacent to a residential district, or the R1 district now. And that 50-foot setback, could be onerous for developers that want to build and then have to not use 50 feet of their land. So what we're suggesting, and we'll clean up with these changes, would be going from 50 feet for everything in that district next to an R district to 10 feet for commercial, 15 feet for industrial is what we're suggesting. And then we talked about the performance standards. you know, they're mentioned in the table, they're also in the district, so there's just kind of this redundancy between the two. Let's see. So the key things we want to discuss and get your direction on tonight are, one of the key things is adding housing types, of course, to the CI district. And what we're proposing is to add the cottage courtyard development housing type, row houses, townhouses, small apartments, and large apartments. And that we're recommending that they be permitted uses. So these are, you know, higher density, non-single family housing types, but they're, you know, they're not in a district that allows single family housing or new single family housing. So we're recommending that they could be permitted uses rather than conditional uses. If you remember from the discussion of the R1 district a year or so ago when that was amended, actually the Planning Commission recommended that the new housing types be permitted uses because that R1 district has standards specific to each of the housing types. And then at the council level, they ended up deciding that they wanted to make them conditional. So right now we're recommending in this district, it would be even more appropriate that these housing types could be permitted uses. They wouldn't have to be conditional uses. The second policy discussion we wanted to bring up tonight was about lot standards. So the CI district requirements are different than the requirements for housing types that are in the R1 district. And just as a reminder, this table is the new table that's in the R1 district. Actually, it applies to R1 and RCN, but lot area and lot width, lot coverage are all set up by housing type. But as you can see at the top of this slide, that just applies to R1 and RCN, so it wouldn't apply to the CI district. So the question for you is, do you want to have the lot area and width be set in the CI district, or do you want to do it similar to the R1 and the RCN and have them delineated by housing type? As an FYI, the CI district's minimum lot size right now is 10,000 square feet for everything. And then there is not actually a lot width minimum lot width requirement in the CI district. It's just as needed. Number 3 is the setbacks. So we have the CI district setbacks today are, they're geared towards non-residential uses. So very small front setback of 10 feet and then 15 and 25. And you might remember from our discussions about setbacks, they don't always make sense. So I'm not going to try to explain why they are what they are, but because that's not always obvious. But where we landed with R1, RCN for residential uses is a bigger front yard setback. Wouldn't have to be the same in the CI district necessarily, but we're looking at, is it 10 or 25 or something in between? Side is smaller for the housing types today than in the CI district. Rear is the same, so don't have to think about that one. And then the last one, number 4, is this idea of a buffer area requirement. And this is something that we see in other cities, and it is in the CI district, but we're trying to get our heads around how it should work if residential is added to the CI district. So here's what we're recommending, if this table makes sense. So for example, commercial next to commercial, you don't need to buffer. I mean, they're obviously the same use. Same with industrial or residential next to each other. But the biggest one would be is if residential's next to industrial or manufacturing, that there's a 20-foot setback. And then, some of the other ones are 10 or 15. And that buffer area, as you could see in the draft, changes to the ordinance are to have landscaping, whether that's planted trees or shrubs or whatever, or a wall, fence or berm. And those are things that are pretty typical in other cities. It doesn't mean that's what is the best solution for Grand Marais. So, that's a discussion for the planning commission. So that's what I have for information. I don't know how you want to talk about these things, but, at a minimum, we thought the focus could be on these 4 topics, starting with the housing types. So I can turn it back
Yeah.
over to you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks so much, Jeff. Yeah, I really like focusing in on the larger housing types that we have available to us in that district. Seems like that would, it's a good use of the space that's there. I think making them permitted it shows our intentionality, even if that's not what happens. At least we can show that is what we would like to see developed there, and I think that'd be great. It's a great use of that space. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I think the permitted use is good. I mean, that make it easier for people to know what they're buying and,
Yep.
not have to go through another $200 fee and
Yeah.
come back and
Talk about it
try to
some
get
more.
additional use, right?
Right, and then come to us and then go forward.
So, especially because we want these anyway,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, no issue with the 4 types, for sure.
Yeah. Comments?
I have no issue with it.
Okay. Very good. So Jeff, I would say, yeah, we're definitely down with that.
Okay. Next one was this lot area. So today, the lot area minimum in CI is 10,000 square feet. I think that was the same for R1 before. I can't remember if it was 10. Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, it was.
10 or 11. Yeah,
Uh,
10.
It was 10 for before, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's evidence of why it's hard to explain why the lot area minimum was a certain number.
Yeah,
That it was the same in those 2 districts.
Yeah.
Seems
strange.
not super logical, yeah. So, the question, I guess, or the discussion would be, in the CI district, do you move towards smaller lot sizes? And maybe it's exactly the same as the housing type lot sizes
Yeah.
in the R1 district.
Like, to my mind, it seems best to have the housing type decide that. That's going to decide how much space you need, rather than establishing, like, this is what each one is going to be. Just say, like, well, if you have this kind of house, you need this kind of space. Like, to me, that'd be the most reasonable way to go forward with that. Unless I'm missing something. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I have to think about that a little bit because I'm not a big fan of limiting,
Right.
size either, right? And then if you
Right.
wind up with, you build a fourplex, because you only have a lot that's that big, and you can only build a fourplex, even though it's probably more cost effective to do a sixplex,
Right.
get a return. But now I'm limited because my lot size is too small. So,
Well, I mean, I guess we already have our standards from R1 that establishes what is the amount of space that you would need.
but you could have a lot that's too small to make the private sector want to build on it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so for example, just looking at what the lot sizes are in R1,
Oh, I see. I guess what you're saying.
nothing, R1 lot areas are all 10,000 or less. So it's 10,000 for an apartment building, and then as you go above 7 units, basically, you start adding what I have on the screen here, 1,000 square feet per unit.
Okay,
Over 7.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's in that area. That's how it looks in the table, but it's a math calculation that I can't do in my head.
Oh, right.
I'm pretty good at math, but
yeah, yeah,
it's around there though. So, and then the 1250, the thought there was, which is in R1, is that, those are, you want those to be more like single-family houses. They're probably closer to single-family houses, so have an even larger minimum for extra units there.
yeah.
And we looked at a lot of precedents in other cities to get those, some numbers that made sense for that.
Yeah,
I guess the other question is, today, the lot width in the CI district, I don't know how as needed works in practice, but there's not a minimum today, basically,
Okay.
so I guess it's discretionary.
right. And is
Which
the-
is,
Jeff, I was
Oh,
just
go ahead.
wondering, I mean, I know that 10,000 is what we say for the CI district, but, well, we said that for the R1, and there weren't a whole lot of them either. How many 10,000 square foot or better lots do we have? Do you know that? Or are
well,
they?
on that, yeah,
Yeah,
so on this map, oh, you mean, are they all bigger? Is that your question?
well, yeah, I was just wondering, like, I know that, in R1, it says in our, code, like, okay, 10,000, but like, there weren't that many houses with 10,000, so I'm wondering, how is it in the CI district? Like, are they?
Yeah, I think it's a different animal, probably just because the CI district, the intent was for larger lots,
Okay,
for commercial industrial,
yeah,
not for single-family homes, even though there are some single-family homes and other residential there. But you can see, like on that map I put up, those gray lots are large.
yeah,
So a minimum's not gonna limit. That being said, there are cities that have considered going away from minimum lot sizes in general, so, if you were gonna do that, I would think in a mixed-use district like this might be the place to do it, more so than in the R1 district,
right,
where you are trying to, if you're gonna have a variety of housing types coming in, you want them to be, compatible scale to what's there today. That's not the case so much in the CI district,
right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, Ben, what you're saying is that you think not having minimums,
Yeah.
kind of like what he was just suggesting.
Yeah, and then trust your setbacks and then provide some sort of rule relative to off-street parking per unit or something along those lines makes far more sense than parking on 61, right?
Right, and I think we have those performance standards
Yeah,
as well. We could just
Yeah.
import over from R1.
sure. But, yeah, use it to the max.
Yeah. And that is a really,
That's really what prompted a lot of the zoning ordinance changes in the first place was density,
yeah. wanting
being
that.
desirable.
Yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
and getting rid of barriers where you can.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm I guess I'd have to think about it a little more, but I'm not really a big fan of minimums.
yeah. So, and then, in terms of this conversation though, are you saying that you would want to look at something that's district-wide rather than unit? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
Just given what this district looks like and how many vacant
Yeah.
lots we're really talking about, right?
Yeah.
Pretty small.
Yeah. Okay.
Relatively small piece of, it's not that much available, is there? Trying to remember.
Well-
There's a lot of vacant.
Yeah, Jeff, can you bring up that map again? So we were just talking about how much is actually vacant at this time?
yes. Yeah, so on the map, it's showing actually quite a bit on the west
gray.
On the
side
west, yeah.
in this area. And in talking with Mike, he had a pretty good understanding, it sounded like, of these landowners. And I guess Patrick maybe could talk to this. I think the property owners were aware of this conversation tonight. Is that right, Patrick?
Yeah, we sent out a notice of this discussion last week to
Okay.
all the property owners in the CI district.
Okay.
Was
And
there
then on
any
the-
feedback?
Yeah, did we receive any?
I got a call and spoke with a couple people, but I didn't get any letters or written feedback or anything, just
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Yeah,
And then on the east side, you can see
yeah, there's a lot less.
not too much. And, the far east side of the district where that purple is, and then the yellow, that might even, we've talked about that, maybe that even gets rezoned to R1, like, and just let that be residential,
Yeah.
not even make it, because it's
So-
not
I'm
on
sorry.
61.
Which piece is that? I'm sorry.
Well, the purple on the far
That-
right.
Oh,
Yeah, the yellow near
Just
the
'cause it's-
purple
it's
on the
residential.
end, and that gray property to the north,
I understand. Okay.
probably wouldn't need to be mixed use because it's not actually on Highway 61,
Yeah.
whereas the rest of the district is,
Mhm.
pretty much.
Got it. No,
So, but,
yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
so you can see there is actually quite a bit of land that could go to residential on the west side if it's allowed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think just looking at the lay of it, it does seem like that's the most logical place that somebody might be interested in doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on the east side, any of those, could redevelop also. So something that's commercial today, maybe it's not a major investment for a big property, and maybe it would be attractive for residential down the road.
Yeah. Okay. No, I do see the wisdom in having one standard for the district. I guess I'm understanding you more now, instead of like winnowing away the size of a property.
I guess the question I've got is, if you do away with lot size minimums, does that all of a sudden chop these larger parcels up infinitely and make it more difficult to?
I mean, that's why I was thinking like, yeah, because if we stick it with, like, let's say somebody buys a chunk, big
Right.
chunk, and then they start, yeah, well, it's subdivided to
And
the
how does
point
that,
where,
and how does that play well,
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. We can look into that.
Okay.
Could you explain that, what you're thinking there? I'm one of the
Yeah.
property owners.
Yeah.
When you say, we have the big
Yeah.
chunk, 6 acres.
Yep,
Yeah.
right. So, I guess what I'm saying is, I just want to know if we didn't have lot size minimum requirements for this zone, particularly as it plays back to residential uses, these 4 uses that are not presumably permitted. if you didn't have lot sizes, you could potentially subdivide real small
Yeah.
and maximize, which is good for you, right? But now all of a sudden, as a developer, or whoever's gonna develop those, now they've gotta try to fit into these smaller parameters and/or buy multiple lots. And so, does that hurt what we're trying to do or help it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't in favor of those small lot sizes myself when they passed them. I think that if I was a lot younger, I'd like to develop that, but we can't. We're
Yeah.
too old. But whoever gets it, I hate to see them limited, though. You might have somebody come in there and do a really, really nice development. And if you put, I like your idea of keeping them big enough where they can work with it.
Yeah.
But if they want, you could have mixed in there on 6 acres, but, I don't really know what's gonna happen there, but just my preference. I like the idea of opening it to housing.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd like to see individual houses in there included.
Oh.
Just to let whoever buys it, they might have a great idea for a development and see what happens. If you're gonna just try to purpose the land for workers and stuff like that, I don't think it's fair, for one thing.
Okay.
We need workers. I don't have any at my resort that like to have workers, but and there is a need for that too, I see, but, yeah, so.
Options.
Yeah,
Yeah.
options.
Right.
That's what I
Yeah.
see.
There isn't gonna be one,
No,
nobody's
you
gonna
got a
come
lot
in
of
here and
people-
solve
a lot
the
of people
problem,
with
right?
many different ideas,
Yeah, right.
and I would hate to see if somebody came,
But,
I wouldn't like to see a big hotel come in there, but if American came in and wanted to buy it and wanted to do it, it'd probably be a good thing for the town. My preference is to see housing go in there, but,
Yeah. yeah,
Well, and to be clear, we wouldn't be, just, if we're gonna make any changes, we're not gonna be excluding existing
no,
permitted uses at all.
Yeah,
So I mean, that's
okay.
still,
Yeah.
if that's a
Yeah.
permitted thing, like, that could still happen,
Yeah,
right?
well, then,
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the thinking of opening up to housing.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that is the idea of just like, we want what is happening
Yeah,
to be able to continue to happen,
yeah.
and just also allow residential uses to happen. Yeah, yes,
Speak up as one of the business owners of the properties,
Oh, okay.
Luke, Fine Finish.
oh, great,
And I only found out last minute, but, because I was out of town.
Okay.
But I just wanted to make my opinions known that more options are good. I came to figure out what the situation was because I had opposed the Hamilton Habitat
Right.
project because it was going to have a converse negative effect on our
Right.
property. So I didn't want to oppose it.
Right.
That was a fine thing for me. I just, if it has this, necessary reverse negative impact, that was what I was gonna be.
Can I ask you a question? So specifically, was it the setback
Yeah,
that
it was the
future
50
development
foot.
on your property?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or was it the sharing lines with residential?
I had no
Well,
problem sharing.
Okay,
lines.
no, and that's just a question,
Yeah.
because I
It
know
was-
some
well, it was
commercial
kind of
people
sharing the
do
line
have a
because it was the
problem.
50 feet from the line that he had to,
Yes,
yeah, which
right.
is
And
fine.
we could do whatever we wanted until we wanted to change our project, and then
Right.
that 50-foot setback would be imposed, which meant we would be paying a higher tax rate on that land. And then once we wanted to do something, we'd lose, I think it was 50,000 square feet of buildable space or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not be able to do anything with it, and then,
Yes,
And-
so that was
And
not
really,
a
it
cool
is
deal.
the
I
Hamilton
was not
Habitat
okay
is
with that either.
the, was the genesis of all of this.
Yep.
It's like, we wanted to find a way, like, we didn't want to impede what's happening, that's
Yep.
good. But how can we have this happen
Yep.
also.
And here's one
Those
other.
proposed setbacks, how do you feel about that? I think the proposed
10 foot?
setback was down to 10 feet when residential meets commercial.
I have
but
no
think-
problems with 10 feet setbacks. The only thing that I saw that was potentially interesting is what the fencing, I know it said industrial only, but if there was a buffer that required fencing or something. I know we want housing so that we can have more, not necessarily all workers, but workers. But at the same time, you don't want to, in my opinion, add obstacles to the businesses which are dwindling. We're having more not-for-profits, less regular businesses, in my opinion. I think, so that burden is increasing, and if there were more obstacles upon us, then I would
Yeah.
consider just changing my business location or something.
So on the buffer end of it,
Yeah, that was.
presumably that would be whoever puts the residential piece in next to you, right, would have to.
It sounded like it would be
support that.
imposed upon the
The
business
existing
side.
business that's there?
It's what it sounded like.
Okay.
But that,
Yeah.
that would be my only concern, is if
No, that'd be-
all
right,
of a
for
sudden
sure.
somebody was building, and then we had to
Well-
put
Oh, you
in
gotta put your
And I
fence.
think-
$20,000 worth of fencing, and
Right.
I'd be like,
Right.
"Ugh."
Yes, I agree with that.
Right, no, I gotcha.
I can speak to that.
Okay,
Yeah, the existing development or business would not be subject to those requirements for buffering or
Perfect.
landscaping. It would be for new development.
Yeah, that was
That's
my
great.
understanding too.
Yeah,
Okay.
as
that would
long
make
as-
more sense.
Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
have some sort of imposed upon negative obstacle.
Yep.
I think that's really the goal, is trying to like find ways to add more value and use and options to that zone without impacting you
Yep.
negatively at all.
I mean, I can
Right.
see the
Like, that
benefits
is
too,
our
because it
goal.
opens up options for me.
Sure, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But didn't want any
Yeah.
unexpected.
No, that's good that you're here.
Oh, yeah, and
That's
thanks,
good.
thanks for coming, for sure.
I used to sit where you're sitting for a number of years too, so I
Oh.
understand a little bit about it. But one thing we did on lots, we had a certain requirement of vegetation and open air. Do you have that on your, is that included in this?
I mean, that-
Thinking, about to have open space?
Yeah, and I mean, we do have that in the
I know downtown.
residential
doesn't.
has them,
Residential.
and I
Let's
think,
just-
yeah, and
just
there are some,
think about
and I suppose even with the buffer that we were just talking about, that could be a green thing, because that was one of the things that Jeff was pointing to too. It could be just whatever we decide as a buffer.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a
That's
fence.
true. That's true.
You know, it could be something that fits Grand Marais rather than
it.
wherever
One
else.
other thing, when I got on here years ago, there was a line that kind of ran through that, it was like it was commercial by the highway and residential up toward where Jack Hasky lives,
Yeah.
because it goes that deep, and there's road access, you can
Mhm.
go that way. So I was always under the impression that it was zoned half and half, but.
Yeah.
what it is now.
Well, it's not a very
Back
deep,
in the-
it's not a very deep zone, this commercial industrial on the north side where you're
Yeah.
talking.
The
Yeah.
property's about 300 feet deep,
Yours is.
290
Yeah.
or 280, something like that.
Yeah,
And that's probably the end of it, right?
It goes back up, all the way back up to First Street.
yeah, yep. All right.
Well, I think this, really good idea to open up the housing, I hope.
Yeah. All right, Jeff, back to you.
Yeah, so that's a lot of good input on the lot size, I think. Lot width, I don't know if you had thoughts about that.
I mean,
Having a lot width, since the CI district doesn't have one today, do you think there should be a lot width?
I'm not inclined. I would think not.
Okay. The third one was the setbacks, so I can go back to that. Are you seeing the slide again?
Yep, we got it.
Oh, good. All right. So, basically just any direction you want to provide on, today the CI district has a 10-foot front, 15-foot side, and in the R1, it's 25 feet, and then smaller on the side. So I think
Yeah.
it's really that discussion about the front setback, which,
That seems really close to the highway.
yeah, that's where, what I see too is, especially for residential, you wouldn't want to be 10 feet from the highway.
Right,
No.
right.
As a developer, I wouldn't think you'd want to do that, but, the city probably also doesn't want housing that close to the highway.
No,
But these are the current setbacks for that zone?
yeah. But this,
CI's is 10 today,
Yeah.
because no residential's allowed there.
right,
I
and
think
so,
there's a 20-foot buffer from the highway setback in the first place that we put on there some years ago coming from the Highway 61. It was after that governor's design team came up here and they recommended a corridor of trees going down there. And I think
Yeah.
they put a 20-foot buffer on.
On top of the 10-foot?
No, just
I mean, I
from
think there's
the
there's the right of way, and then there's the 10 feet. So like earlier, if you were here earlier, when we were looking at
sure.
that fence line,
Yeah.
you can see like,
Oh, that's the right
when he was
way.
talking about that's within the 10 feet, you're like.
Yeah, I
what?
got, yeah.
But it's pretty far. So I don't know, Ben, and, with that in mind, but I still think, I don't know, residential, especially if we're talking multi-unit, I don't know if 25 doesn't seem more appropriate for that. And, maybe that goes to the, what you do with it, like you buy the property,
Right.
you wanna do residential, it's 25.
Again, I don't want, I
Yeah,
don't
no, I
want
know.
to burden
Yep.
current owners of properties with
Mhm.
more restrictive setback requirements.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanna look back just a second, look at that picture.
Unless
because-
there's a way to do it only with regards to the new permitted housing developments, or residential uses, but
Yeah, I mean, that is, just started looking at that, like, okay, so that's not, obviously, so it must be
not
further.
virtually to scale there, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Just imagining that.
Nobody's gonna put an apartment building 10
Yeah,
feet
that's
from
what I
now.
think. Yeah, I don't think it's.
Nobody's gonna
Might
do
want the gas
it.
station.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I don't know, I don't know that we need to do anything there. I think we might let that ride. If anybody, if somebody comes up with something with the 15 feet, they can get a variance if they need it, but,
But here's a question.
Yeah.
Why, is there any reason for us to keep the 25-foot in the rear? Or can we encourage that to be built more on the north end of the property,
yeah, although at least on the side, on the north side, it's already pretty narrow. Right. So maybe that is a big thing to think about. I don't know, I guess the reason why I was thinking like it would be, no, actually, it's abutting R1, right off the back.
Right. 10 foot. Right.
Well, no, because they're both 25 for their rear. So that's why I was thinking like, well, they're both 25 for the rear, so fine.
So you got that same 50-foot of,
Yeah.
Jeff, we're getting a bunch of noise from your end.
Oh, sorry about that. I am here at another city hall. Because I have a meeting that started at 6:30. I'm not on the agenda first, so.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
Well, we'll be,
I
all
have my headset on to try to prevent most noise, but
right. Thanks for that, Jeff. Okay, so what are you saying, Ben? You want to just get rid of it all? Like, go to zero?
no, I don't want to get rid of them. I don't know.
I don't know. I think just because my thinking is,
the point of the setback?
yeah, well,
Yeah,
Yeah,
almost everything has some kind of a setback.
yeah, and I think the reality is what's that?
Well, just because everything else has just make it a good idea, purpose.
Yeah. And you know, I'm a little tired and I don't have all the answers. You know, like to me, it seems like, yeah, why wouldn't you have a shorter one or whatever? But people do like to have elbow room. And we're thinking about the people off the back who may be like, hey, you know, I'm in R1 and I gotta be, maybe they don't want somebody that much closer to them on that side. And to my mind though, I mean, my real point here is that if somebody is building something and they go, you know, I just can't do X without bumping into this 25 feet, I really doubt we would say no if it's a reasonable request. And they're not building something crazy that doesn't make sense.
That's true.
So it's not written in stone. And I do feel like, I mean, we're laying the groundwork for a lot of freedom for people to do stuff. And hopefully building housing is part of the stuff. So I feel like that 25 feet, I don't think that's going to stop anybody who's thinking about building. I think they'll just say like, hey, I need to bump into it this amount.
Well, in an effort to not create any more change for existing landowners in that zone, I
That's
would
right.
say we should not mess around with the setbacks as they currently sit.
Yeah. Yep. I would agree with that.
You're right, they can be done through variance, they can be done through whatever.
Yeah, if it's necessary. All right. Jeff's ahead of us. We're on to 4.
Jeff, I muted you. Sorry, you can unmute yourself if you want.
I apologize, I'm not trying to.
Oh, no.
No.
No, that's fine. No worries.
There, can you hear me now?
Yep.
We can hear you now.
So the last one is related to this. So it's this buffer area standard that would be considered between different uses. So I think the main thing there is, you know, these are smaller numbers than that 50-foot that exists today.
Right.
So that's a benefit. You know, kind of the direction we're interested in from you is, what are your thoughts on requiring landscaping? What we've suggested in the first draft of the ordinance is that one alternative would be there's 2 alternatives. One is landscaping, so it's, you know, things that are planted and hopefully getting to specific quantities, so it's, you know, clear what the requirement is. Or it could be a wall, fence, or a berm, and it would be, you know, most likely up to the applicant or developer to choose between those 2 buffer types. That's the way we have it written right now, is the suggested way. But we just wanted to get your direction on what you think about requiring landscaping and or walls, fences, and berms.
Yeah. Well, I think as we were talking about before, you know, if the new developer comes in and they know that that's part of the deal, and there's a lot. I mean, do we already have in our ordinance the performance standards for landscaping?
Landscaping does exist in the CI district.
Yeah.
It-
And it is described.
There's
in-
no specificity to it.
Okay, right, of course. Yeah, well, that leaves a lot of freedom.
Well, the point is that
Yeah.
we're creating a defined space
Right.
and leaving room for an intentional buffer, which is good. And the measurements seem appropriate.
Yeah, yeah. Those all seem very reasonable and like we've seen in other towns.
So I think if, you know, at a minimum tonight, if you are interested in considering going this direction, you know, we could then suggest quantities of, you know, planted materials, number of trees per, you know, whatever, frontage, feet, or for size of the lot, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We could we can, you know, suggest something in that area. But we wanted to make sure first,
Yeah,
it's something you think makes sense to look at.
yeah, no. Yep, it does seem appropriate, Jeff, for sure. And it'd be great to get something around that landscaping.
Okay, that was what we were looking for tonight, unless you have questions or other comments.
No, looks really good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, Jeff.
Sure.
Appreciate all your work. When do we get to hear from you again?
I don't want to speak for staff, but I think staff is thinking about the July meeting, having
Okay. Fair enough.
have this be on the agenda and potentially a public hearing.
Great.
Good.
Patrick might know that.
I would assume that's what.
That'd be good.
Great. Yeah.
And get it
Yep.
to the city
Get some more
council.
public comments and all that jazz. All right. Well, thanks so much, Jeff.
Yeah, hopefully next time I'll be there in person.
Yeah, that'd be great.
See you, Jeff. Thank
See you,
you.
Jeff.
All right,
Thanks.
thanks a lot.
Yep. Well, with that,
Call it.
call it adjourned.
All right.
Excellent.
Who is that?